thank you all so much for joining me today, and I really hope you enjoy it. Just to introduce myself, my name is Hayley, and I am our Assistant HR Advisor in iTeam. I will also be joined by my colleague Roxanne Gibson, who is our Senior HR Advisor. So today's webinar is number 1 in a series of 4. So please do look out for our remaining sessions that we have coming up. Today's webinar is all about managing the probationary period. I am also going to touch on the induction program too. So we'd love to hear from you. And at the end of my webinar, there will be an email address to put forward ideas for our future webinars. A recorded version of this webinar will also be available, and a link will go out to everyone that has signed up. So a little bit about the webinar system itself. You will see there is a Q&A tab as well as a polls tab. Please add your questions as we go through the webinar, and Roxanne will answer these for you throughout. I have a couple of poll questions, so when I mention poll, if you click on the poll tab, you will be able to answer the questions I am asking. So, talking of polls, just before we get into the main session, I would like to ask some questions to understand today's audience better. So the first poll question on your screen asks if your practice is NHS, private or mixed. And there will be a second question that coming up shortly as well. And this question is regarding how many people are in your team within the practice. So I'll just wait a few moments to give everyone a chance to answer both questions. Okay, so I can see the results are coming in. So far, it looks like we've got a good selection of NHS, private, or both. And we've got a good range of employees within your practices too. So that's great. Thank you so much for participating. And let's get started. So, as you can see from this slide, the session content for today's webinar will cover quite a lot of information. We will go through what should be included in an induction, what a probation period is, how to manage a probation period, an overview of employment rights relating to probationary periods, and how Agilio can support you to make the process easier. So to start with, we're going to look at the induction process. The purpose of an induction is to integrate a new employee into the practice so that they are encouraged to become an effective and motivated member of the team. CQC inspectors will look to ensure you, as a practice, carry out inductions for all new team members. If you are a member of iComply, you will find a template that will lead you through the induction process step by step. It's called the Induction and Probation Record, and it's document code M225A. You will also have access to the Staff Induction Overview, which is document code M225, and our Employment and Induction Policy, which is document code M233-EIN. But please do not worry too much about making a note of these codes, as I have included a slide at the end of the webinar capturing all these helpful documents that will help support you. So to implement an effective induction program, it is important to remember this is not a one-off event. Instead, it takes place over a period of some weeks and is an ongoing process to ensure that your new employee settles well into the organisation and is confident carrying out the full scope of their duties. Having a comprehensive, structured induction process has been shown to play a big part in improving long-term staff retention. Failure to do this well can create a poor impression and undo much of the good work which has attracted and secured the new recruit. By having a comprehensive and structured induction process, it will ensure you comply with the Equality Act 2010. When carrying out your induction, you should ensure that no new employee is placed at a disadvantage on account of gender, race, religion or belief, sexual orientation, age, pregnancy or maternity, gender reassignment, marital or civil partnership status, or disability. This means that your induction process may need to be adjusted to cater to the specific needs of an individual employee. So let's talk about the pre-start admin. Having that clear employment and induction policy will form the framework for your induction. As I mentioned in the previous slide, there is also an overview document available on iComply for staff induction. And if you are a member, I recommend you read and familiarise yourself with both documents before you start to plan for the induction of a new team member. So you might ask yourself, when does the induction process begin? Well, the induction process begins before the employment start date of your new team member. It is in fact triggered from when the first set of your key policies and procedures are sent to your new team member. I recommend you plan the employee's induction, including who they will meet on their first day, who will monitor them, and who will get their workspace ready. Again, it is important to remember an effective induction program is not a one-off event, but instead takes place over a period of some weeks and is an ongoing process to ensure that the new employee settles well into the organisation and is confident carrying out the full scope of their duties. So you might be wondering, who is responsible? Well, it is the responsibility of the line manager of the new employee. They must ensure that the induction plan has been created and continuously followed. In most cases, the practice manager would deal with the staff-related issues, including recruitment, induction, and probation. So I recommend you complete all paperwork beforehand, and that includes the iComply staff file checklist M249, induction and probation record M225A. Have it ready for when they start, as this will make their first day easier for you, but also make a more enjoyable experience for them. Share all necessary practice policies and procedures, including the practice staff handbook, so that they can read through prior to starting. This can also be a task they complete in between when you have your normal day job to still fulfill. Provide any uniform and/or confirm dress code so they are clear and are not worried about what to wear. Confirm their start time, where best to park their vehicle if applicable, and also lunch arrangements. All of these will also help ease any anxiety or worries. You might also consider asking them to come in 30 minutes later than their normal start time on their first day, as this will allow you additional time to prepare. It is also helpful to outline what will happen on their first day so they know what to expect. And by providing your email address and work mobile, you are allowing yourself to be accessible for queries, and this too will help alleviate any anxiety or worries. Finally, it's a good idea to ensure their practice email account has been created so they are ready to start using this on their first day. So following on from the pre-start admin, we are going to look at day one and week one. The induction and onboarding for their first day will include the following: getting their workstation ready, which includes all information technology to be set up and available for use. Logins have been created, a list of important contact numbers have been created, and all user guides provided. Giving a guided tour of the practice, which will include all health and safety aspects, such as fire exits and first aid points, practice lockers if you have them, where the bathrooms are located, and full orientation of the practice itself. Complete introductions, and this could be done individually, or perhaps you might want to consider a team huddle to welcome your new team member. You may wish to assign your new team member a buddy. This should be agreed beforehand, but they will act as a first point of contact and be there to handhold as necessary. And this will help to support you as a practice manager. You may consider holding a team lunch to make it an occasion. And you may wish to give a welcome gift, such as a signed card, a practice mug, pen, or water bottle. So we have covered your new team members' first day, and now we will talk a little bit about what to cover in their first week. So it would be a good idea to provide them with a team sheet so they know where they fit in and who everyone is. Introduce them to your culture, mission, and values, which are the beating heart of your practice. Go through all health and safety, policies, and procedures, checking they fully understand the legal requirements. Introduce them to their onboarding journey, so let them know what their next few days and weeks will look like. And finally, it's a good idea to schedule regular meetings, perhaps 10 minutes daily for the first 2 weeks, so they know they have a regular point of contact. This will help you pick up on any issues quicker, but it will also make them feel valued and part of the team. So, you may have heard about the recent changes regarding the right to work in the UK. From the 1st of October 2022, employers must carry out one of the prescribed checks before employment commences, as set out in the guidance by the UK government. These checks are a manual right to work check, a right to work check using IDVT, which stands for Identification Document Validation Technology, through the services of an identity service provider, otherwise known as an IDSP, or a Home Office online right to work check. Conducting any of these checks will provide employers with a statutory excuse, which is a defence against a civil penalty. So I would like to next discuss with you document storage. Whilst there is no issue with storing documents in hard or paper copies, the key is making sure that you have the information on file. However, we are speaking to a lot of practices who are moving away from traditional paper files for security purposes, but also to save space in the practice. It is also a tool to make life easier for practice managers, as this is the type of information we hear you spend a lot of time chasing team members for. For our IT members, documents obtained in accordance with the staff file checklist can be uploaded to the iTeam application and stored electronically here. This is a cloud-based system with password protection to increase the security of the documents. This also means it is easily accessible in the event that you need to find information. For example, if the CQC asks for evidence. There is also the functionality for reminders on the system to prompt you to obtain new documents when they are due to expire. For example, GDC registration certificates or indemnity. This will make remembering renewals of documents much easier and will act as a prompt for you. These reminders also go to team members so they can do this on behalf of the practice. There is also the functionality on both iComply and on iTeam for documents to be sent to team members to review with a read acceptance functionality, where team members electronically confirm that they have read the document. Team members can upload some documents for you, and this creates the right impression from the start of the engagement and helps to demonstrate that you are a progressive practice to work for. It also helps demonstrate that you are organised and creates the right first impression. So if you think this would be a practical solution to meet your HR document storage needs, please do get in touch with us and we will arrange a demo for you to help you decide if you would like to join us, or if you are already an iComply member, we can discuss with you an upgrade and what that can offer for your practice. So now we're going to move on and talk about the probation period. So, what is a probation period? Well, the main purpose of a probationary period is to ensure an individual's capability, reliability, and suitability for permanent employment. Usually, a probationary period will last for a period of 3 months, although on occasions with higher level roles, you may decide a longer probation period is more appropriate, and at which stage a decision will be made as to the individual's suitability for continued employment. It is important to maintain good records of probationary review meetings with the employee, logging all training and support that has been provided, as well as any issues. Probation may be extended if the team member's contract allows for it, should performance standards not be met during the first 3 months, but the new employee demonstrates the potential to achieve them with a few more weeks of employment. If you are a member of iComply, I recommend you familiarise yourself with the probationary period policy and procedure, and that is document code M225B. If your practice decides to include a probation period, this must be set out in the employee's contract. So alongside your induction program, you will be running a probation period. The probation period will be a key area in your new team members' first weeks and months. The probation period will enable you to identify whether the team member is suitable for the role, reliable, and if they are capable of the role. Probation periods also allow the employee to assess whether the role and the organisation is right for them. By having the probation period, you have a time frame where you can focus on the new team member. This will be key in understanding if they are suitable for a permanent position within your practice. It is important to understand that the probation period is an ongoing process and to record the probation period to build those audit trails. It is important to know that the probation period has no legal status. So probationary periods have no special legal status, and employees who are on probation enjoy the same statutory employment rights as other members of staff. All employees' lengths of service determines their statutory rights, and the fact that they are on probation has no bearing on this. They are also entitled to the national minimum wage or national living wage, statutory sick pay, and rights under the working time rules. Employees who are on probation usually have only a short length of service and therefore unable to claim ordinary unfair dismissal, for which 2 years service is required. However, employees do not need a minimum period of service to claim that their dismissal was for an automatically unfair reason, such as for asserting a statutory right, or that it was based on unlawful discrimination. So, what tools can you use to help monitor the probation period? Firstly, their job description. This can be used to evaluate the team member's performance. Next, having a structured training plan. You can use the probation and induction record document code M225A, and this will help create that training plan and to identify any training needs. Thirdly, probation records. So as I've just mentioned, in iComply, there is a template you can create specifically for your team member, which is the probation and induction record. Document code M225A. By using our template, you can keep accurate records of any meetings held. And by keeping these records live and update them in the moment, you will have created a good audit trail for your team member. And finally, attendance records. So this will help you keep track of your team members' attendance and will help you to make a decision on if they pass their probation. We do have available in the iTeam application a time and attendance feature. This is a great feature to have within your practice and can help you to keep track of your team members' attendance. So how can you manage a probation period? So the manager should discuss with the new employee the following: what the employee is expected to achieve in their new job during the probationary period and thereafter. Details of the core values of the organisation and behaviours expected of the employee. The standards of regular attendance expected from the employee. The standards of customer service expected from the employee. Any development required to help the employee to do their job. How any problems with performance will be addressed, and when the probationary period review meetings will take place. So the onboarding process continues over the coming months. And this includes weekly reviews. So don't drop the communication button. If you do have concerns about the employee during the probationary period, this communication is important to help you manage the situation. Also, ensure you are documenting the conversations to build your audit trail. Hopefully, all is going well and you are enhancing that onboarding process. So, introduce them to your people culture, how you communicate and act as a team. Give regular feedback, find out how they are doing and if they are happy. Identify immediate role specific training. So that could be, for example, systems implemented in the practice. Agree soft targets, so goals for your team member to meet in order to pass their probation period. Plan their personal development plan. So identify career goals, post probation plan to help you plan the future and also to aid retention. Celebrate the success, confirm permanent contract. This could be through an internal website or social media and make them feel part of the team. Staff satisfaction survey. So how did we do? Is it important to get their, it is important to get their feedback as well as help make any necessary improvements for the future. So bear in mind, you may find in the first month that you are unable to review performance just yet. Therefore, month one, I would recommend you focus on conduct, attitude, enthusiasm in the team fit, attendance and timekeeping, demonstrating experience as per CV or application states. Month two, the same as month one, but you should also be able to bring in the performance element. And by month three, your team members should have a clear understanding of both conduct and performance. Again, just to reiterate, and if you have any problems with conduct arise, they should be addressed immediately and not left until the next formal review is due. So, having reached the end of the probation period, the most desired outcome is that your team member successfully passes their probation period. If the employee has demonstrated satisfactory performance, conduct, and attendance, and met the standards required, you may have come to the decision they pass their probation period. During their meeting, you will deliver the great news, letting them know you are happy with their progress so far. I recommend that you set new objectives and targets for the coming appraisal year. It is an ongoing process to monitor your team members' progress continuously and not just for the probationary period. During this meeting, it's important to identify any training or further development needs. Your team member may express an interest in wanting to undertake further training. After you've had this meeting, I would recommend you follow up this confirmation in writing. So we have templates available in iComply for our members to use. The document title is Letter Confirming Permanent Position and it's code M245B-CPL. If you are not using iComply probation period policy or contracts, I would strongly advise you to check the contract and policy that you are using to ensure you confirm to the team member as per your company policy and contract. So if you do not feel your team member is at a point of successfully passing their probation period, one option to consider is probation extension. If your team member has made sufficient progress, but you believe there is still room for improvement, either conduct or performance wise, you may choose to extend the probation period. The right for the employer to extend the probationary period should be set out in the contracts, so do check your employee's contract for confirmation. The extension should be for a reasonable period, taking into account any training needs for the employee and how long it might take them to complete an improvement plan. The reasonable period will vary depending on what is required to pass the probation period, and this should be reflected against those requirements. In your meeting, you should discuss the employee's performance and why you're extending the probationary period with them, and allow the employee to put forward any explanation for their performance issues. You should state the improvements that are required and the standards that are expected in order for the employee to successfully pass their probation period. Terms and conditions still apply during the extension period. I would also recommend you confirm in writing to the employee how long the extension period is for and the requirements in order for them to pass their probation period. So I thought I would take some time to go through some absences that may occur whilst your team member is on their probationary period. So the first one is annual leave. So annual leave is accrued from the first day of that team member being employed and not from the moment they pass their probationary period. They are still entitled to that statutory amount of holiday, which includes the bank holidays. So you will need to pay all owed annual leave in their final pay if the employment is terminated. With annual leave, we do recommend you ask new team members to refrain from taking annual leave during their probation period unless specifically agreed during the interview. Next up is sickness absence. So sickness absence is a common one that can happen during the probation period. Sickness absence during the probation period will need to be monitored and managed in the usual way. Where the absence is frequent and or long term, this may make it difficult for the employer to assess the employee's performance during the course of the probationary period because of their reduced attendance. You will need to consider whether to either terminate the contract due to the employee's failure to complete the probationary period satisfactorily, extend the probationary period to give the employee more time to demonstrate the suitability for the job, or confirm the employee in post regardless of the absence. So your team member will still have that statutory entitlement to statutory sick pay. So next we'll have a look at pregnancy related absence. So issues related to pregnancy and maternity can arise during the probationary period. For example, a new team member may inform you a few weeks into their employment that they are pregnant. Under the Equality Act 2010, they are protected from unfair treatment due to their pregnancy, and you therefore may need to make some adjustments or allowances for them during the probation period. So next we'll have a look at emergency leave. So all employees in their probation period are entitled to emergency time off for dependents in the same way your other team members are. We do have a policy available in iComply for emergency leave, and this document is called Family Emergency Leave Policy, and the code is M233-FEL. And finally, let's look at unpaid leave. So a new team member has the right to request unpaid leave. However, it is at your discretion to approve this, or if this is not practical, you are able to decline. So there may be occasions where you decide termination is the required outcome. So let's take a poll question so I can establish how many of you have been in this situation. Have you had to dismiss an employee during the probation period? So I'll just wait a few seconds whilst you all have a chance to answer this poll question. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for taking part in my poll question. So the results of the poll show over half of you have found yourself having to deal with this situation. We receive calls on a weekly basis to the helpline asking how they can terminate a new team member during their probation period. If you are in the unfortunate situation where you are contemplating termination during the probation period, there are a few things I recommend you consider prior to reaching that termination meeting. Firstly, have a bit of a review to understand what exactly has gone wrong here. Has it been triggered from the recruitment process? Is it a case where on paper they were brilliant, but in person they have not delivered this to you? So just have a bit of an understanding how you have gotten to this situation. I would then recommend you review your probation period policy and make sure you are very clear what you need to follow and the procedure you need to follow to come to this termination. If you are an Agilio software member and you are following iComply policy, then you will need to complete the following steps. So ensure the team member has been provided with adequate opportunity and they are demonstrating that they are trying to improve. And you have given at least one warning to your new team member that their performance or conduct is putting their employment at risk. I would also recommend that you have all records and audit trails up to date. So going back to those probation review documents, this will ensure a good audit trail is available to back up your decision and you can justify the termination. So a decision to terminate can be taken at any time during the probationary period. You do not have to wait it out until the 3 months is up. If your team member is clearly falling below the required standard and insufficient improvement is likely expected. If you find you are in this position with a team member, it is important to seek advice before you hold the dismissal meeting because there is going to be a level of risk. We all know they cannot claim the normal unfair dismissal because of their length of service, but there are still risks there. So please do not hesitate to seek advice before going ahead with the termination. Now, during the probation review meeting, there are just a few things to really think about and consider. So again, you need to ensure you are following correct procedure to come to this meeting. So you need to inform the team member about their right to be accompanied. Now, their right to be accompanied comes from our iComply policy and procedure and is stated as one of their rights during the termination meeting. If you are not following iComply, I strongly recommend you familiarise yourself with the policy and procedure you are following and implement it accordingly. We also need to provide them with adequate notice for this meeting, and I would recommend this being not less than 24 hours. I would advise you to do this in writing to ensure you include the right to be accompanied. You may also want to have someone independent in the room in a note-taking capacity. And if you do this, please ensure you advise the team member. During this meeting, it will be a really difficult conversation to have, and it will be highly emotive for both yourself and the new team member. So please ensure you are as honest as you can be. Just be really clear with them the exact reasons that have led you to make this decision and confirm the decision you have made. I would recommend that you let the team member know what is going to happen next. I would also recommend the team member does not work their notice period. Once they are aware their employment has been terminated, they are not going to be very productive and they are not going to want to work for the practice. And therefore, you are not going to get the best results out of them. Due to this, I would recommend instead pile-on, which means paying in lieu of their notice period. So you just need to check their contract of employment to understand what that notice period is. I would also recommend any property they have belonging to the practice is returned before they leave the meeting. This might include uniforms, security fob, or even practice keys. If they do have keys, I would be thinking, should they actually be a key holder if they have not demonstrated that they are responsible or reliable yet? Therefore, I would refrain from issuing keys. This can help mitigate any risk. So by retrieving all property at the meeting, this will save you having to pursue doing so later down the line. And lastly, advise your team member they will receive a confirmation letter in the post stating what was discussed in the meeting and also a clear termination date. So for that confirmation letter, we have a template in iComply that you can use for this occasion. The document title is Termination of Employment During Probation Letter, and it's code M245B-TPL. And in this letter, you will confirm the reasons that have led you to make this decision. And just to reiterate, you must be really clear with the termination date as well. This will make sure you have a clear end to the employee-employer relationship by confirming the termination date. You also need to let them know what to expect in their final pay. So, as I previously touched on, they will have payment in lieu of their notice period. And if you are using iComply contract templates, any service less than 1 month is no notice. And if over 1 month, this will be 1 week's pay. If you are not using our iComply contract templates, please do refer to your employee's contract for their specific notice period. They do have the right for any accrued but unpaid holiday to be paid in their final pay also. And lastly, also include in this letter, if you are using iComply policy and procedures, you will want to let them know about their right to appeal your decision made. We usually suggest that this appeal can be up to 5 days of the decision and who to address the appeal letter to. So let's have a look at some of the most common mistakes and areas of risk associated with probation and induction. So firstly, no contract or written statement of particulars. So regardless of the probationary period, it's a legal requirement to issue a written statement of particulars as a minimum to an employee on or before their first day of employment. Employment starts from your original start date and not from the date at the end of your probationary period when you've been confirmed in the job. This means that the length of service, which is essential for determining your eligibility for statutory employment rights, starts from the original start date and isn't affected by the probationary period. Next, so having no reviews, monitoring, or training plan. So the risk here is that you don't have any evidence to show you are complying with your legal obligations. Next, fair treatment. So you have a legal obligation to comply with the Equality Act. If you don't, you risk treating employees unfairly in relation to a protected characteristic, for example, terminating due to a disability or pregnancy. The right to appeal. So it's important to ensure you do not forget to include a line of appeal if it is stated in your policy. Final payment. So this can include calculating wrongly, withholding pay, not remembering to pay for accrued but unused holiday, and the pylon, so the pay in lieu of notice. If this has happened and is unresolved, your ex-team member could make a claim to an employment tribunal. And lastly, wrongful dismissal. So the key difference when it comes to wrongful dismissal versus unfair dismissal is that unfair dismissal is a statutory right under the Employment Rights Act 1996. So in other words, it's a right an employee is entitled to regardless of what their contract states. Whereas wrongful dismissal is a contractual right, so one that is set out in their contract of employment. So now we're going to have a look at some actions. So I recommend you review your employment and induction policy. Familiarise yourself with your staff induction overview. Review your probation period policy and procedure and ensure that you are following this. And also ensure all feedback and reviews are recorded to create that audit trail. So as mentioned earlier, here is a list of all mentioned iComply documents that will help support you with your induction and probation period process. So this will be included in the send out that we email out to you. So don't worry too much at the moment about making a note of these. So that brings us to the end of the content for this webinar. And I really hope you've found it useful and are able to join us for our next webinars in these series, as well as our future webinars.